When I was in my early 20s in St. Louis, I lived with my boyfriend. We both worked at a large government agency. We had a large group of friends who would all party together. At one particular party, there were a lot more guys than women. The guys were all playing football, air hockey, and some other games while drinking excessively. I've never been a huge drinker, so I wasn't drinking. I was just hanging out in the kitchen looking at magazines because I found the party to be boring with mostly men playing games. At one point, a guy that I'd seen around town but didn't really know walked into the kitchen and started chatting with me. He said, "Your boyfriend seems to be ignoring you." I told him my boyfriend was really into competition and loved playing in foosball competitions. Then he walked over to me and unexpectedly grabbed me. He picked me up and started walking out the back door. I was kicking and punching him while struggling to get away. Another woman walked into the kitchen at that minute, and I screamed for her to help me. I was frightened, but in shock, since I didn't see it coming. The guy, whose name I didn't know, laughed and told her, "It's okay, we're just playing around. She's fine." The woman ran into the foosball room, grabbed my boyfriend, and told him some guy just carried me out of the house. My boyfriend ran out of the house after us and caught up to us as the man was pushing me into his car. I was still fighting and kicking, but he told me if I didn't shut up, he was going to make me. I was frightened out of my mind. Just as my boyfriend got to the car, the man changed his entire demeanor and said, "Hey man, you were just ignoring her, so I was going to take her to get something to eat." So untrue. My boyfriend quickly analyzed the situation, grabbed my hand, and told the guy, "Hey, I'll take care of her from here." The guy got in his car and drove off. I burst into tears. We went back into the house and called the police. After talking to them on the phone, they said no crime had been committed, and that was it. I have no idea what could have happened to me. Maybe nothing. Maybe something very bad. After that incident, I was always on guard at parties. Actually, I became hypersensitive to my surroundings after that entirely. From that point on, I was always looking to see where the exits were. I always had money and change tucked into a pocket if I had to escape. To this day, I still keep money in my pocket, but I always have my phone with me. I have a tracker on it in case I disappear. My family can track me. I also have a panic button on my home alarm system and cameras that back up to my cloud. Yes, I'm paranoid. Better safe than sorry. When I hear about women at bars or parties getting drugged and assaulted, I realize how lucky I was that I hadn't been drinking, that I had my wits about me. I was also lucky that that other woman saw the situation for what it was and helped me. I also understand after my incident how serial killers grab women, children, and weaker victims right out of public view. It's the element of surprise and not being 100% aware of your surroundings that can put you in the worst danger. So, please stay safe, everyone. I've been held against my will twice. The first time it happened to me was when I ran into an ex at a department store. He seemed so happy to see me. We chatted for a while in the store and then went our separate ways. I was walking to my car when I felt eyes on me and looked around. I was confused to see my ex's motorcycle was now parked by my car, and he was standing there staring at me. I felt a little uncomfortable but waved bye to him. However, it seemed he took this as a come over instead. As he walked over to me, he was laughing and saying it must be fate that we ran into each other again in the parking lot. I wasn't so sure about that, but smiled and said it was good to see him again, but that I had to get going. He looked disappointed. I started to get into my car and he asked me to wait. I got back out, turned around and looked at him. He said he had actually just gotten an apartment around the corner and really would like me to come over and see it. If I came over, it would also give us a chance to catch up some more. I said I really needed to get going. He looked around for a minute and then said that he thought he had some items of mine still and that he wanted to give them back. I knew that he had taken some of my CDs when we had split. The thought of getting them back was appealing to me, so against my better judgment, I said okay. We went into his apartment where he took my coat and bag. I was a little uncomfortable with him taking my bag, but thought maybe he was just trying to be polite. He then gave me the tour. It was a nice place, but I didn't have a chance to tell him that because he was talking a mile a minute and saying he was so excited to have me there. We sat down on the couch next to each other where he kept talking about his life. I sat there listening, but wondering when he would get my stuff so I could leave. Finally, he stopped to take a breath, and I asked him about the stuff he had mentioned. He seemed displeased that I'd brought it up. He sat there for a while longer, and then he leaned in, closer to me. I was surprised when he reached out and grabbed my hands, attempting to kiss me. I pulled back and stared at him. I said, "Bruce, this isn't going to happen." He started going on and on about how he knew we'd get back together and how he was not going to let me go this time. I started shaking my head no to what he was saying, which seemed to make him more upset. At one point, he started yelling at me about how he'd been a mess and too young to handle us, but he'd grown up now. He said he deserved another chance to prove it to me, that there was still something there. I was speechless. We'd always had a rocky relationship. The final straw was when he cheated on me with one of my best friends after we'd had a bad fight, so I had zero interest in getting back together. I started to repeat myself that it was not going to happen. When he jumped up off the couch and started pacing around the room, he was getting cagey, like an animal, telling me I couldn't say no, that I couldn't leave until he got a yes. He walked out of the room, and I looked at the door. I could make a break for it, but he had my wallet, my phone, my bag. I was still feeling like an idiot for being there when he came back. I could see when he came back, he was holding a gun in his hand. He kept walking back and forth now in front of me on the couch. He said nothing had been right in his life since the day that I'd gone, and that he wasn't going to lose me again. I opened my mouth and he grabbed the phone sitting on the table and threw it at the wall. It broke apart and I just stared at him. At this point, I had a very bad feeling. I watched him continue to walk around, and I could feel his anger and frustration. I'd never seen someone look so desperate, and that was not good. He finally sat down in a chair across from me. He laid the gun down on the table near him. He was a really good-looking guy. All my girlfriends had thought I was crazy when I broke up with him the first time. I tried to explain that he was unstable, but no one listened to me. He'd worn me down after that first breakup and cycle of makeup, and then the breakup had started again. I'd finally gotten free from him, though, and it had been 2 years since I'd seen him. I sat there looking at him. My mind was having a hard time rationalizing how this cute guy with this innocent look to him was now holding me against my will, essentially having kidnapped me. As I was staring at him, I could see he was trying to get a hold of himself. He finally laughed, said that he was sorry that he was acting so nuts, but that he just couldn't let me leave. He needed me back in his life, and he would never hurt me again. I looked at him and then the gun. He shook his head and said if he used that on anyone, it would be himself. I didn't know what to say to that. I was really having an out-of-body experience. I felt like I was someone else, watching all of this take place. I looked at the clock and realized I'd been there for about 6 hours. I hadn't moved and had hardly said anything. I looked at him and forced myself to smile, which he then smiled. I said, okay, We can try again. You're right, there is still something here. I'll stay with you. You don't need to hurt yourself or anyone else, but if this is going to work, you're going to need to trust me. I really need to get to class. Folks are gonna wonder where I am, and I don't want to tell anyone about this since we're getting back together. But I'll come back because you're right. We can make this work. He got up and walked over to me. He grabbed my hands and pulled me up. He wrapped me in his arms and hugged me. I soon felt tears hitting my neck as he started crying. He just kept saying, "Thank you," and "I love you so much. You'll see things will be different. I have my shit together now." I nodded my head and asked him if he could get my stuff. He said yes and walked away, but he kept looking back at me. I assume he was still making sure I was there. He handed me my things and I said, "Okay, I'll be back later." And he kissed me. I barely kissed him back. As soon as I got out the front door, I ran down the stairs and out of the building. I jumped in my car and never looked back. He called nonstop for a while after that, but I didn't answer. He came by my house and I never answered. Finally, he was gone. However, over the years, he has reached out to my friends, family members, trying to contact me a few times. Believe it or not, he still doesn't have himself together. He's been married many times, has several children, was homeless, and had a few successful businesses and then lost them. I look back and see my time with him. It was one big scary roller coaster ride, and I was glad to get off. My advice to anyone who's broken up with someone like that is don't go back. Don't meet them anywhere. Just let sleeping dogs lie. And if you're kidnapped, keep calm and try to find out what the person wants. Talking to the kidnapper can sometimes help, like in my case. Might even save a life or two.